welcome back. Now, as a former Culture Secretary herself, Nadine Dorries has a thing or two to say about our biggest broadcasters. So you can imagine she really has not been holding back about this whole Phillip Schofield scandal we've been watching unfurl out of This Morning over the last week or so. Now, she's been calling this matter an abuse of authority, power and trust. She's calling for a probe into complaints made to ITV about Schofield. And having appeared herself as a guest on This Morning last year, she says she's seen firsthand how, quite, rude and unprofessional the former presenter behaves. So who better to ask than the lady herself, the MP and TalkTV host Nadine Dorries, from TalkTV's very own Friday Night with Nadine. Nadine, let's start very simply then. Should This Morning survive? We've got some connection issues there, Nadine. If you just want to unmute yourself, because we've got a lot of questions to ask you about broadcasting, about This Morning. You got us there. Should This Morning survive?
I didn't actually mute myself, but there you go. So yeah, I don't think it can survive. It's a story which isn't going anywhere, and it's one which is unfurling and moving on a daily basis. I think there have been legal hurdles when it first broke, and I think those hurdles have been overcome now. So I think it's not going away. I think it's one that's going to continue to grow, and I just don't think it can survive in its present format. And I think it was Diane Nelms who said it, that, you know, who's the original editor of the show, that it really just needs to go now. It's also a stale format, actually. It's been here for a very long time with the same presenters. But there is so much which is questionable about the entire culture within This Morning as a programme. And we see this happen a lot in organisations, not just in television companies or broadcasting organisations. It happens in organisations like the NHS and major companies. A culture grows, it becomes toxic, and it is protected by those who are aware of the culture until something gives. And it's usually a whistleblower or something happens to kind of blow the lid off. And that's what's happened on This Morning. I've spoken to people who've worked on the programme, over a number of years, and they all tell the same story. And so can it survive, your substantive question? Possibly, I don't know. You know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think it should survive. I think it needs to be taken over by a safe pair of hands, a pair of hands that the public know that they can trust because they've been lied to. There's been duplicity and almost a cover-up. And I think they need a safe pair of hands while they spend time thinking about what should we do with our midday spot, our magazine spot. Should we continue as it is? So I don't think it should survive.
Nadine, I mean, I get your point about this happens in other types of industries. You cited there the NHS, it happens at corporations, toxicity, investigations, that sort of thing. But those are fundamentally more substantial and important things, you know, hospitals and healthcare and companies. This is just a TV show, isn't it? I mean, I'm not detracting from what Schofield's done. I think it's abhorrent. I'm not detracting from the experience of the boy at the centre of the all, which we must always keep in mind as well, and keep him anonymous and the rest of it. But it's just a TV show, is it not? Why do we care about this? Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter to the public?
Honestly, Rosanna, that question almost makes my blood boil, because we have in society men who use their positions of authority and power and trust and use those positions to behave in a way which is inappropriate and unacceptable. I'm not going to quote others within the same industry, within entertainment. We know within the entertainment industry there are serious problems with individuals. But I think now we're at a point when, you know, following on from Me Too and other things that have happened, I think now we're at a point when when behaviour which has been identified and which has been covered up within a culture which has protected that behaviour, and in a culture which is toxic and hugely inappropriate, it has to be called out. It's not just a television programme. It's a situation where not good things have happened. And I'm afraid that ITV, both the executives, the editor and other people on that programme must have known. And therefore, because of that cover-up, then I'm afraid they have to be held accountable. ITV is a public, free-to-air public service broadcaster. It has responsibilities, both ethical and moral, and standards that it has to uphold. Just because it's a television programme doesn't mean it can absolve itself of those responsibilities. We all have responsibilities when we know that inappropriate behaviour has taken place, to call it out and to make sure that it's dealt with in a way that sets an example that others can see, so that they don't follow and they don't allow that behaviour to fester within their organisation.
I think that's a strong argument. I think setting the right tone, the example. I want to come back to you on the public service broadcasting side of it and the regulation point as well. But I want to pick you up on your first point there about, you know, my question making your blood boil, because your answer, in a sense, makes my blood boil, because you said it was about Me Too, or it could be construed as having something to do with that. And this is a man that is bullying. And yes, Phillip Schofield is a man that is bullying in this situation. But I am always first to point out when there is gender-based issues going on, toxicity and misogyny. But in this sense, I think it is irrespective of gender. It is just an ego. It's just bullying. It's toxicity. And we see this across many industries, and it's not always men's fault. There are women bullies in this industry, and I have encountered them, and I'm sure you have too.
I'm new to television, so I don't work in the industry as you do, Rosanna, or for as long as you have. So I haven't come across that many people. All I can say is that the women I've come across on Talk have been absolutely fabulous, empowering women that I've loved working with. So I haven't encountered it myself yet. But, you know, if I did, I would call it out in the same way I would if I encountered it in a man. In the same way I called it out in Phillip Schofield. Now, I'm afraid I haven't heard women mentioned in the capacity of any form of abuse or behaviour that we've seen amongst other men in the entertainment industry going back over a number of years now. And, you know, we do have to be very carefully legally. So I'm not going to cite other individuals and other high profile stories that we all know about. But the point here is there is a man, Phillip Schofield, who has himself resigned stepped away from his role and was further going to work with ITV in another role until ITV removed him, who has behaved in a way which has been highly inappropriate, and that behaviour has been covered up by executives at ITV who absolutely must have known about it, because everybody else did, and so I find it impossible that they didn't. The editor of the programme knew about it, and complaints were made, and those complaints were not acted upon. And if they were acted upon, they weren't acted upon in a way which got to the truth of the situation and exposed what was happening. I'm afraid that, you know, every now and then something will happen which needs to reset people's thoughts and behaviours and their approach to their work and how we conduct ourselves, whether it's in television or it's in offices or wherever it is. And I'm afraid this is one of those instances.
It is one of those instances. I'm in agreement with you there. We must obviously state the executives have denied a lot of the allegations levied against them. A lot of these details are still ongoing and emerging. And we have, of course, had statement upon statement from ITV denying this, as we've had statement from Schofield as well. But some astonishing revelations just in the last 2 hours, Nadine. This one about the payoff that executives allegedly knew. This is an article in the Mail Online this evening. Executives knew about a payoff that was given to the young man as he was moved over to Loose Women. And the other a bit of detail that we've got here are more pictures of the anonymised young man that I want to come to you specifically on, given you a former culture secretary, is that the executives are going to be hauled up before a committee, a government committee next week, to talk about this as part of the sort of media bill review that's ongoing. So talk to us a little bit about why you think the government should be intervening here, because a lot of Americans look at British TV and say government intervenes too much.
Well, because ITV is a public service broadcaster, and therefore it will play a huge part in the media bill, which is a bill I launched and introduced when I was Secretary of State. The media bill impacts ITV in a way which is favourable to public service broadcasters. So I'm afraid it's absolutely right and proper that they should go before the DCMS select committee. Absolutely right that they should.
Do you not think that there's some of the public will see a bit of an irony in seeing members of Westminster debating sleaze and corruption in the TV industry?
Oh yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Might be a reason why I'm standing down the next election.
Yes, you have stood down, and it is worth restating. And of course, you're part of the TalkTV family. Now, just before we let you get on with your evening, and what a family it is, the producers are saying, yes, it is a family. Let's just, none of the allegations levied, I will say, that we've talked about relate to this network at all. But let me just ask you a little bit about your experience when you're on This Morning. What was it like? And what kind of impression did you get of Holly as well?
So I found Holly absolutely lovely, and she was a delight. And I can't remember how many times I've been on the programme, but it was the last time I was on when Holly wasn't there, and someone was standing, it was Joe standing in for Holly. And what I saw actually made me, so you can see the picture on the screen at the moment. Gosh, I can't remember the presenter. Her name's
Josie Gibson.
Josie Gibson. She was on, I think it was Love Island. And while she was holding that very script in her hand, and the camera was on me, he leant over and started jabbing at that script like this in her hand. Couldn't possibly have seen what he was pointing to. His face was like thunder. It was incredibly aggressive. And she just sat there holding the script as he was bashing it with his hands while the camera was on me. And it actually made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And yeah, I mean, he was unpleasant, you know, and I know I've heard from so many people that he, you know, didn't know the names of anybody on the production teams, even people who'd worked there for years, many years with him, that he was rude. I mean, I think Eamon Holmes has given his own account of what working with Phillip Schofield is like. And obviously he's far more authoritative than I am. I only saw him, you know, for the occasions when I was sat in front of him. But I always found Holly an absolute delight. What I'm disappointed about is, as the story has moved on, it is actually unbelievable that Holly did not know what was taking place. And although I find her a delight personally on a personal level, I think there must have been some degree of that cover-up encompassing Holly as well. And I think that's incredibly disappointing, because I think she's an amazing role model for women, particularly women who want to work in the television industry. Her career has been just impeccable, and to this point, I'm afraid, a bit like, you know, in the morning show when the host took down other people with him. I think Phillip Schofield might be just people he's been working with on This Morning, which I think is sad, because I think Holly's a professional, and, you know, I've always found her lovely. But it could be the case that she didn't know what was going on, because everybody else did. He wasn't as close to Phillip Schofield. We will be talking a lot more about this toxicity and what people knew. But Nadine, it's up to you, me, everyone else in the industry, obviously, to continue to be nice, to not be bullies, and to engender a better working environment. Nadine Dorries, it's been great having your insights on this evening. And you too. Take care. Cheers, Nadine. Thank you.